Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
I promise everybody, I did not rob the Louvre. But hey, Charlie says he's in Japan, but do we really know that? Anyway, Alvin Reid sitting in for Charlie Brennan again. Welcome to Donnybrook on this fantastic Thursday, really the first real fall day we've had in a while. So, the fall queen, Wendy Wiese, is here with us today, media veteran, joined by Bill McClellan, one of our founders, Post-Dispatch columnist, Sarah Fenske from the 314 podcast and St. Louis Magazine Online, and Joe Holleman from the Post-Dispatch, political columnist. Hey, a little shout out to our audio guy, Greg Burkle. He got married over the weekend, so congratulations. Yay. And I'd say, this week is the first day of the rest of your life. Welcome aboard. All right.
So romantic.
Well, yeah, I've been married 42 years, right? Anybody can do it. Well, it seems like anybody can do the job of superintendent of St. Louis Public Schools because we've run through, 5 of them in the last few years, counting interims. And we have yet another one after Millicent Borishade was asked to depart the premises. And the media was right there waiting for her as she, what we call a perp walk to her Mercedes-Benz with still Washington State license plates on it. So there will be a national search, although the candidate could certainly come from SLPS or from the state or from around the city. But here we go again, Bill. So we're now in search of a new superintendent. And the interim superintendent, Myra Berry, was the interim head of the HR, Human Relations Department. So round and round we go, Bill.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'll do a perp walk for $750,000. I mean, the idea that she's getting $750,000, thank you, Tony Cousins and Brad Davis, who put her in sort of out of spite, I think. But at any rate, as far as the national search goes, Alvin, I have always been against national searches. I think you get people who interview well. And, if we have a national search for this, I wouldn't be surprised to see a George Santos. Let's get somebody who we know knows the school system and has performed well. And I don't know the inner workings of the St. Louis Public Schools enough to know whether the interim has performed well, although I think her salary was $200,000 or $220,000, so I hope she was performing well.
Well, Bill, on your subject of George Santos being our only hope if we go the national hire route, I don't want to put too much faith in the St. Louis Public Schools, but one would hope we could do a simple background check and detect some problems from a national candidate. We could check some references. I think there's been a couple agencies in town that have hired from outside of St. Louis lately. The one that's popping to mind for me is Explore St. Louis, where Brad Dean is now the CEO. And just the new ideas coming in and we don't have to do things the way that we've always done them.
He's the guy from
Puerto Rico?
No, I was thinking somebody else. I was thinking the fella from Falling Rock.
You're thinking of maybe a Greater St. Louis area.
Yeah.
That guy,
right.
I can't, jury's still out. That guy hasn't started yet.
Dr. Keisha Scarlett was the product of a national search.
I get that, but just because that one went so bad, I think we can all acknowledge the school board running SLPS was not at the top of its game in that era. I don't want to give up on the idea of a really qualified outsider, because the way things have gone in the St. Louis Public Schools District, can we really say we want things to keep going along the same line, somebody to be a caretaker for the legacy of what this district has accomplished?
Well, this would be bad enough. If you read the legacy of Millicent Borishade, it would be bad enough in a clothing store at the mall. And when you think of the students and the future, and these are our babies, they are the future. And to think that she is walking out saying, I think I'm just going to go home and decompress. I'm really, really, really proud of the work that we've done here. And that is the legacy of Keisha Scarlett as well. So to me, it seems like a scam. I mean, it does seem like a scam. She brought in, Keisha Scarlett brought in 9 cohorts. They were all making excessive amounts of money. And if they can stop this from that kind of thing from happening again, that will satisfy me. And I do believe that you can have somebody great from within the SLPS. You just have to find them.
I'm not an enemy of national searches, but in this case, I agree with Bill. Give it to the person who's already been there. You can't do worse than the last 2 that they've had. I mean, no matter how you do it, you might be able to just walk out on the street, throw a Frisbee, and whoever catches it might do a better job than Ms. Borishade or Ms. Scarlett. So let's give this woman a try. What I was surprised, and I'm not saying that she's not earning it, if you will, but the idea that Ms. Berry, the new interim superintendent, had a job that was like 3rd or 4th on the list and was making $200,000 a year. How much money do they just throw at people, and this is the result we get? I mean, there has to be not just a change in who the superintendent is. There has to be a change, which we got some, in board members, a way of approaching this whole question, because whatever it was you've been doing, change it all. I mean, because it just hasn't produced any of the results that you want a school district to actually produce. So let's see what this woman will do.
You're going to do that with an internal candidate. Like, it feels like you're kind of agreeing with me that we need to change the whole way we look at this, but then pluck someone
But see, the national search is not a change in the way we look at stuff. That's the new trendy thing to do. And so what you get are hired guns moving from one job to another with no investment in that community, no history in that community. I'd like to see someone run the city schools who went to a city school.
And that's what the union spokesperson was saying.
Right.
We need somebody to believe in the community, to want to build something in the community. But how many people were reading the account of that meeting on Friday, thinking of this woman walking out with $750,000 when children could not be transported by this district last year? It's just a...
Well, at least there's a new... Brad Davis and Tony Cousins are gone.
Right. Matt Davis.
And that's Matt Davis. Right. It's a good thing.
Right, and listen, as exorbitant a sum, as it was that we are giving her to leave, I have to sign off on that. She had to go at any cost. And so I don't think that that's money wasted because it's leaving with her and she can take it back to Washington or wherever she's going to go. But I was perplexed by our one school board member who resigned in the wake of all this, Ben Conover. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing his last name, but I don't get that. Now, I mean, I understand sometimes people are dismissed and you might think that they were dismissed unjustly, but can somebody explain to me how he could throw himself under that bus?
Well, and how
in this situation?
And the histrionics, where I just can't believe what they've done to Millicent Borishade, and after everything that she's accomplished. It's like, wait, what? And he was so upset with the way that, certain standards and practices were not followed and that it was against the charter of the state charter. When did Borishade or Scarlett follow any? So he was a puzzlement to me too.
I think so. I have known Ben in a professional context for some years now, and I think he's really passionate about one issue, and his issue is he doesn't want to see public dollars go to private schools. He doesn't like how a lot of the money from SLPS is now being siphoned off into charter schools. That's what he feels passionately about. And my understanding of this is that he felt that Borishade had that same feeling as he did, that this is what was important.
She was completely incompetent.
Well,
and he's
I'm not
also,
arguing with that.
Another one of his passions is keeping state control out of the SLPS. Right.
But I think she had to go to at least keep the state up, because as long as she was there, then I think the governor might make good on trying to interfere with St. Louis public schools. And as somebody pointed out to me, some names here, some of you young people may not go. When Borishade was hired, somebody said, this is like Nixon resigned and Ehrlichman and Holleman were hired to be the president of the United States.
Well, I mean, and there's the other thing with this situation is all the people that Keisha Scarlett brought in, there's one theory of thinking they all need to go.
Well, that was my thought.
Right, you clean everybody out. And as far as Mr. Conover, if he'd like to go down as a vote to retain her, Can they change the vote and make it 6-1 to get rid of Millicent Borishade? Sure. And will that make them feel better? I mean, talk about missing the picture.
Yeah,
right.
Here,
and if you were
that's
gonna
what
fight,
that is.
And I got to, I'm not a big charter school fan either. Maybe not to the extent that he is, but if you were going to fight that, I think you're better served doing it from the school board than doing it from your house watching the news. So, anyway, we go from SLPS to SLDC. Now, Otis Williams says that the permit, process is too slow, and that the incentive well had dried up, and that's really, really harming development in the city. And Sarah, you had a fantastic story saying that Mr. Williams kind of left out some pertinent facts during his, his presentation to a Board of Aldermen committee.
Yeah, my colleague Eric Schmid dug into this and just found some really interesting stuff. This was like this formal report that under ordinance he has to give to the Board of Aldermen every year. And in it, he painted this dire picture. As a city resident, I was reading Eric's draft going, wow, this is really alarming. What am I doing living in the city of St. Louis? Like, man, these last couple of years, he had some stats like 40% of all businesses have moved out and building permits are down by like 50%. I'm like, this is a disaster. Well, Eric, my colleague, dug into this in part because somebody contacted him and said, this is not right. Turns out it wasn't right. And it just took a couple phone calls looking at publicly accessible databases. And Eric was able to show, no, actually building permits are on pace to be what they were last year, if not slightly higher. No, 40% of businesses have not left the city. It's just that 40% of businesses were in the zone that was hit by the tornado. Like, talk about a misinterpretation of data. It really made me question, Otis Williams would like to see more incentives go to developers. This is a big philosophical debate at the Board of Aldermen. It left a bad taste in my mouth that he tried to stack it with such bogus data.
Well, first of all, I think it's unfair of you to expect the head of SLDC to actually have facts at a hearing.
Okay.
That seems to be what a high bar you've set for city officials. So it sounds like someone prepared a report who then gave it to somebody, and Otis just got up there and said what he said. Which also just goes to show you the overall inefficiency of government. When I read that, it was like, well, they should be boarding up this entire city. Why are they not just, moving us all out? Come on, everybody, we're leaving the city.
We're going to Chesterfield.
And so when it got corrected, it was like, okay, we're going, like Chesterfield would have us.
We would.
And it just struck me as one of these, it's like, SLDC always seems to have ideas, and then you'll go, well, what about these facts? Or what about the fact that you're going to send money to a business that's actually located in Maplewood? Well, yes, that does seem to be the case, isn't it? It's like you can't really depend on things that they tell you. And I'm glad they squared it away, because I had the same reaction was, my God, we're dead.
Right.
And Otis didn't seem apologetic about it.
Yeah.
When you threw all these facts that, this isn't right, and this can't be right. From reading the story, Sarah, he did not seem apologetic about it.
Yeah, I think their point was like, here's some nuance on this, but our overall point still stands. We still need to be giving away a lot more incentives. And I'm like, I need to think about whether that point still stands.
Yeah, all of these facts are wrong, but my point still exists.
Right.
Again, you guys expect a lot from city officials.
Well, no, wait. Now, one thing is
so unfair.
Okay. There was a target put on Neil Richardson as being incompetent, unlawful, whatever, during the past election. Mm-hmm. And if it's more of the same, then somebody needs to go back and say, like, you know what, maybe we were a little too hard on Neil Richardson when we should have been just hard on what the whole SLDC setup. All right, and two, and I've been warning people about this, and this is kind of rearing its ugly head again. The tornado is going to be the be-all and end-all, and people better take control of where money is going, where ideas are going, and all this. Because it seems like, all you got to do is say, like, well, because of the tornado, we can't do this, so we got to have that. And I think that's kind of what Otis was doing as well. Like, anything goes as long as you put tornado before.
Well, you sort of get the sense that reading the story that it is a new day. I mean, it really is a new day. And we have been kicking the can down the road on these issues for a very, very long time. And now, I mean, daylight, or is it sunlight, is the most powerful antiseptic. And I think that we're seeing a little bit of that with some of these worn out ways of doing things.
And the parallel, we just got done talking about the public schools.
Yep.
There needs to be fundamental changes. And no, I don't think anybody was too hard on Neil Richardson. I think you should be hard on every single person in city government. That's what we're supposed to do, is be hard on them. We're not supposed to give them breaks. And just because you changed one incompetency for another incompetency doesn't make it okay, or say, well, maybe we shouldn't pick on the incompetence.
And Neil Richardson was in charge during these giveaways where, we're giving money to the Museum of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
When it turns out there is no museum. And
When I say too hard, what I was saying was all the shenanigans was going to stop with Otis Williams and this new administration. Obviously, all the shenanigans has not stopped. So I'm like,
we need a national search.
Well, there you go. We didn't do a national search. By the way, Otis is the interim.
Yes, I know.
Right.
Well, sure.
I think the problem is when people believe that government shenanigans stop because you changed governments.
Okay.
No, they don't.
Same government.
It's just a different person running different shenanigans. That's all.
Different nameplate on the desk.
Don't trust any of them. That's a good approach, I think.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Well, last week a story was breaking on Rene Knott's departure from KSDK. And I think, Sarah, you guys had the first interview, and I think the Post followed up with it. But I'm going to go to you on this one, Wendy. Just in reading the story and how he was, asked to leave or he resigned, I've still got questions. Do you as well? Or?
I thought, first of all, if I was like anybody else, I plead guilty. Prurient, just that I immediately thought, oh God, what what did he do? And then it turns out and I think I was still reading your newsletter when I emailed you to say, what? Because it was so shocking. It was just so shocking, the circumstances and the story that was reported, that he was, it sounded like, and I might be reading between the lines, that the machine was moving too slowly, that he had been promised the 5 o'clock anchor spot and that was not working. It sounded like he was getting frustrated in the workplace, kind of getting aggressive, making remarks about workplace violence, or even sort of offhanded remarks about potential CTE impact while he was playing. He was a standout football player in California. But and as much as I certainly feel for the guy, but you, in 2025, you cannot do anything like that. You cannot say anything remotely potentially violent in the workplace. People are already, I think, their nerves.
Well, he denies it, though, Wendy. I mean,
No, he denies the context, I thought.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought that, like he was saying about, he doesn't even have a rifle. Let's talk about his AK-4.
He did stress that in most of these cases, he said, I have no idea what conversation they're talking about. There were a couple, like with the CTE, where he said, yeah, I think I did say I might have CTE, but
I hope I don't have dementia
I meant it that I might have dementia. He said he's never said anything violent. Now, that is definitely a different impression than was left by his colleagues.
Right.
And I think it was very hard talking to him because he's very charming, and I felt so bad for him. He was so upset.
Yeah.
But normally in that situation, you would expect somebody would say, okay, I said this, and somebody seems to have misinterpreted this, but that's not what I meant. There was like no common point between the things that people said that he said and the things that he said that he had said.
Yeah.
He acknowledged that is why they asked him to go, that people had made these complaints, but he said, I never said any of this.
But there have been, KSDK, there have been a lot of high-profile people of color who have left their positions, through just like Art Holiday retiring, but Anthony Slaughter. I mean, so yeah, I could see where people are still asking questions and scratching their head.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything to give on that one, Joe?
The situation, we're trying to come up with a, a scenario that's missing any comment whatsoever from the company.
Yeah, good point.
And so I have a real problem of trying to figure out where everything fits in. I've read our coverage, I've read your coverage of it, and so I kind of have a handle on what Rene Knott is saying about what happened or not. On the other side, though, and I get it as much as you don't or do not like it, but I've never been in management. For some whatever reason, the Post-Dispatch has never decided that I was management material. But,
Well, I'm in line too.
yeah, so we've never been in charge of anybody, barely ourselves. So, I mean, but they're not going to comment because they have a bevy of attorneys going, don't say a word.
Right.
And so they're not going to. So I don't know what happened. It seems unfortunate that this is how that career comes to an end.
It's kind of sad or telling that none of his colleagues have come forward and said, that's exactly what Rene's telling the truth, or I don't know where this
Yeah,
happened.
that's true. I think that's where,
Well,
there's a lot of that going around these days. Why doesn't somebody speak up? If they got a problem with it, you would wish somebody said something. And I guess one time a reporter once said, like, hey, how about we run that on 1A? And I said, like, how about I run you over with my car? So I think now, and I laughed, but I mean, I could have been fired for that now.
That's it exactly. Even
And,
the most
Also, I
benign-
guess people who live in newsrooms realize
It's
the sense of
very
humor
different.
that exists in there is probably not acceptable in 95% of the other businesses
Even back then,
of
yeah.
this world,
98%.
even back then when, so
Yeah.
I was just uncomfortable of drawing any conclusions. It seems like a sad ending to what was this 20 years of a community relationship.
Okay.
Very much.
All right, Joe, are you looking forward to going down to Springfield for a few days for the trial of Sam Page? Apparently, the county executive's attorney says the indictment is rife and full of errors and just basically set up to make Sam Page look guilty when in reality no crime has been committed. Should Catherine Hanaway, the Attorney General, just let this go?
No.
No.
No, I mean, and I'm not saying anybody's guilty or innocent here. That's why you have trials. But I think the notion that an attorney's, this came up a week or so ago when they said, well, do you know that Cori Bush's husband's attorneys filed a motion to dismiss? Well, I'd fire any attorney who didn't file a motion to dismiss. And I would fire, if I were Sam Page, I'd fire any attorney who didn't say, this case is ridiculous. There's no merit to this case whatsoever. That's what attorneys do. So let's let a judge decide what that is. Just because the attorneys for Sam Page said there's no case here, that doesn't mean there's no case. So let it go through the process, and if a judge says, you're right, we throw it out, I'd be happy with that. But the idea of where Hanaway should pull it just because the opposing attorney said you made mistakes in your case, that would be every case.
I was going to say, I do think it's more than that. I read these filings that they made yesterday. I thought this case was flawed from the get-go and said that on the show. But after reading these filings, I'm like, this is a really flawed case on a number of levels. I will be surprised if a judge doesn't toss it based on this motion.
That's what I was
I
thinking.
agree.
Well, and that's why you file the motion.
Well, I would say that the idea that we'll have a trial, this is like a jaywalking case. I mean, the idea that Sam Page committed some felonious crime on the surface is silly. And I say that, I don't think that Sam Page is going to successfully run again. I think Brian Williams is a very good candidate and makes a great argument about you got to get along with the people on the council, especially in your own party. But what Sam Page did, I don't think rises to the level of let's have a trial.
And informational versus political, in terms of the document and the fact he does not, and I have questioned many of the things that he has done as county executive, but he does not seem to be the kind of reckless, hey man, who's just going to not talk to the county council's office and say, where are we here?
Yeah, and he's got enemies on the council.
Right.
And Tom Sullivan, everybody likes him, great gadfly. And if he catches you jaywalking, he's going to take a picture of it. But that doesn't rise to the level of a crime.
I think if there's a reason, I think if I was Sam Page, I would be more interested in pursuing selective prosecution. Because what Sam Page is being accused of here is something that everybody has done before, and it's been wrong when they did it. They're spending taxpayer money to promote an issue. And yes, Tom Sullivan has been a shrill whistle on this subject. That doesn't make Tom Sullivan wrong when he's complained about it, is that taxpayers' monies always gets used, and you know exactly what the government wants in their informational propositions.
Okay, all right, we got to move on. All right, we got to move on real quick here. Washington University decided to actually go to, I guess, a Zoom meeting, at least with representatives of the president, about preferential funding. So, but they say they're not going to sign whatever this pledge is. Why on earth would they meet with these people if they were not going to sign it? I wouldn't have had anything to do with it. But Sarah, where do you stand on that one?
I would go to the Zoom meeting. I think, Wash, you had to go to the Zoom meeting. They have to go so they can say, hey, we listened to him, we heard him out, we decided this wasn't for us, rather than just rejecting it out of without even giving it.
But why not reject the nonsense up front? You're not going to tell us how to run our university, and you're not going to threaten us.
Because he's the president of the United States.
They're scared.
Well, I think it's a more effective rejection to say, hey, I listened to this. I gave it a chance, and guess what? This is no good. Versus like, oh, I wouldn't even give it a chance. He has a great rebuttal to
These
that.
are representatives of learning institutions.
Right.
You learned more by going to the meeting
Right.
than not going to the meeting. Nobody's making you sign it, and they've said they're not going to. But they at least understood what the argument was. The knowledge that they have now is greater as to what's going on and what they need to be wary of.
Well, and I think that nobody wants to antagonize this president because he is a vindictive fellow. Yeah. And I think that they thought, well, we'll go along and we'll at least pretend to listen. And
in the editorial, though, that the two professors wrote, I did think it was interesting that way down, they did talk about, they said very legitimate concerns about, the curriculum on campus, about the echo chamber in the classrooms. So that is something that has to be addressed. There are a lot of people in this country who are concerned about it.
Look, you got to stand up to bullies and not be bullied, and that starts with saying, I don't even want to hear what you have to say. But we want to hear what you have to say. Okay. If you want to write a letter, send it to Donnybrook, care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Send an email to Donnybrook at 9pbs.org or a tweet to hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Give us a ring on the comment line, 314-512-9094. And you can find us at the podcast place of your choice. Hey, come back, see us on YouTube. Last call coming up. We're going to talk about chickens, and we're going to talk about pet adoption, and also the sheriff. He's back in the news again. So, Joe, you were here sitting in my chair. Thank you very much. Charlie, going to be gone another week. Maybe they'll catch him with all that stolen jewelry from the Louvre. Well, no, a crown. Yeah, right. Marie Antoinette's crown. All right, there we go. Thank you. We'll see you on Last Call.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.